I'm Scott Al Miller. This is my life living in Leon, Nicaragua. One of the comments on the show yesterday was someone mentioning that they were thankful for my videos explaining the difficulties, the challenges, and the long-term prospects of having a business here in Nicaragua. And specifically, we were talking about ones in San Juan del Sur, although that's really kind of an aside. It's really that they're very challenging here. And he thanked me for opening his eyes to just how difficult that was. And he felt that this puts a kind of a reality check on the expat dream, although I'm not sure that's really what the expat dream should be, or at least what the takeaway is of it. So we're going to talk about that. But he also wanted to know what was my way of determining how I would invest in a business as an investor here in Nicaragua, given that there's this difficulty in actually seeing a profit turn from that. So how do I evaluate different businesses in order to make that decision for myself? Well, those are great questions and things we're going to talk about right after the bump. Let's start with the first part of this question, or the first comment, which is maybe this puts a damper on the expat dream. I don't think that that's really true. I think that the expat dream is generally not one of opening a local business in a place you're moving to. That is a fantasy of tourists, but not a dream of expats. I mean, of course, there are some expats who have that dream, but by and large, that's not really an expat dream. I do understand that once you are in tourist mode, everyone is sucked into this, I'm going to operate a tourism business. It seems like fun. It's going to make me lots of money. And so there's this fantasy world everywhere where you go on vacation. And the same thing happens if I go to, Florida and I'm at Disney World. Instantly, I'm like, you know what? I could open up a little Disney memorabilia store somewhere near Disney World, and people will just flock in. I'll make tons of money. It won't take any work, and I'll be able to live really well, go to Disney World anytime I want. Of course, this really applies to people who are, Disney aficionados, but you get the idea. Yeah, I'm going to basically do no work. No one's saying you're going to do no work, but there's this idea that, in normal life where logically business is much easier, that business is very, very hard. Opening a restaurant in Seattle or opening one in St. Louis and actually making money, whoa, the odds are so against you. But that's a million times easier than opening one in, say, Orlando or any place where people are dreaming of being, that it's a destination that they're trying to get to, where just being there is part of the value, right? So that alone should be just layers harder, right? Places that people are desiring to get to make it harder. But there's this perception that where we come from is hard, and any place that is tropical or warm or a vacation destination is somehow easy. We just imagine that everybody else has simply never thought of having a business in a destination that they want to live in, and that everyone is stuck where they are because they're clueless business people, and that the secret to good business is simply going where people want to be rather than where they're stuck for work, and you will magically make money at minimum risk and effort. It is the most backwards, illogical thing possible, and yet we all do it. It is a hard-wired, illogical craziness built into the human psyche. I have no idea how we evolved something so self-destructive, but we all have it. Everybody. So yes, from that perspective, this tourism fantasy world where we move to paradise and drop a few $100s, suddenly own a huge popular business and are just rolling in money, is a thing everybody fantasizes about, but it's essentially like winning the lotto. Yep, we all have a dream of winning the lotto, but it's not anyone's, like, we don't think of that as, well, my dream is to win the lotto. Yeah, we all understand everyone's dream is to win the lotto, but we don't really think of that as, like, when we talk about the American dream, right, there's an obtainable thing. Sure, we may argue that it is much less obtainable now, and it's a little bit harder to define, sure, but we all understand that it's within the realm of reason. I want a white picket fence. I want a small little yard. I want a dog, 2 cats, 2 children, a boy and a girl, and my wife's going to stay home, cook all day, and I'm going to go to the office, but no more than 40 hours a week, commute by train, because this dream is from the 1930s, and I'm going to dress in a suit all day, come home, have a pipe, sit by the fire and read the paper while eating smoked halibut, right? That is the traditional American dream, the Tom Sawyer American dream, if you will. So we all kind of understand, and that is within the realm of reason. Maybe hard to obtain, maybe take some effort, but if that's actually what you wanted, if anyone still wanted that, then it would be a realistic thing. maybe not most people, but you get it. So when we're talking about the expat dream, we're generally talking about the ability to move from a place that you want to live in less to select from around the world, from many, many, many different choices, a place that is your essentially dream location, and being able to make a life there that is both on a location basis and overall better for you. Hopefully a lot better. That's really what I would think of as the expat dream. At no point in that is it a invest and run a business dream. Generally, expats have very different dreams than wanting to be an entrepreneur in a new location. Many people think that the solution to their financial problems is doing that, and that's delusional, but those are two separate things. Those people still dream of winning the lottery and not working at all, right? So that's not what their dream is. So I don't think that that's really what's going on. And I think just stepping back and defining a little bit of what we would all, mostly I've got a plane flying over, so I'm checking them out, what we would all define as the expat dream is the first step. And then defining how we would normally get there is the second. So the first step is what I said, right? We to be in the expat mode, we have the places that we come from, which could be anywhere, right? And we want to, instead of living where we just happen to be born, selecting from hopefully an entire world of interesting potential locations and cultures and food and cost of living and legalities and other factors, and finding the mix of things that works best for us, whether being a major component, distance to the ocean or mountains, the views, the big city, the small city, little town, being able to farm or whatever, putting all these different things together, the language, the food, you name it, and coming up with a place that nothing's going to be perfect, but far exceeds our where we were born match to ourselves. And there are a small number of people who are perfectly matched to the place that they're born, but that's not normal. Most people have somewhere else being the perfect location for them, all things considered. But can you get there, or do you realize you can get there, and do you know what place that is, are all very difficult questions to answer. But that's the real expat dream, of getting to that place and finding ourselves in a situation that just makes us wildly happier as people like I have here in Nicaragua. So that's really the expat dream. And then, of course, the second part of that is, how do you make that possible? Most people either have to have saved up and have retirement money, and then all you need is a place that's relatively inexpensive compared to your retirement savings. And Nicaragua is a perfect place for that for so many people. It is one of the lowest cost options that you're going to find. Of course, there's ways to get cheaper, but not a lot cheaper. And so this is very good for that. But for those of us who are the working class schmucks still and have to go out and earn a living, then what do you do? Well, and that answering that second piece of how do I, as a non-retired person, fund my life in my new location is where the dream is already established. This is enabling the dream. And this is where this illogical jump to, I want to start a business in this location, comes in, and must be founded in some basic misunderstanding of how people make money, how business works and such, because it's mostly people who have not run businesses previously, are missing some basic fundamentals of business thought processes, and then apply what I imagine they just perceive as how business works. Because many people truly think business is magic and finance is magic, banking is magic. These are things that most people are not taught and don't step back and take time to think critically about. We had some comments recently on the show where several people were complaining that some businesses took out double insurance and were making all this money and cheating the system by having double payouts on things that they insured. That's not how it works at all. Every time you insure something, you lose money, but it helps hedge against risks. So what they're doing is gambling on the futures of their insurance policy. It's completely legal. It is not a scam in any way whatsoever. Wow, that's loud. There is no person being taken advantage of in any way whatsoever. It is completely their money, and they're putting it into completely legal insurance mechanisms. On average, they are losing money. They are gambling against themselves, and sometimes that makes sense. And probably they're insuring with their own insurance company and other mechanisms. It's probably some form of tax structure in reality. But at the end of the day, insurance isn't free. You pay for it, and the insurance companies generally make money, which means you're paying more for it than you're getting on average. So this is one of those things where people just get emotional and get the backwards reaction. Instead of saying, wow, what a weird financial gamble, I wonder what makes that work, they go, ooh, they must be cheating the system. No, not at all. Clearly the opposite. Well, the same thing here. There's this feeling that by owning a business, money is magic. But people didn't own businesses in the places that they came from, or they would know that wasn't true. So they're just imagining that somehow they can start a business and just be funded magically, and they won't have to, not that they won't have to work, but they won't have to work so much harder than they would have where they're from. So that's not logical. Moving from a high-cost location to a low-cost location, which is where my audience typically is. If you're doing the opposite, if you're living in a place like Nicaragua and you're moving to a place like Canada, chances are you're picking Canada because it's a job market, not in spite of the fact that it's a job market. If that's the case, then chances are you are going there to get a job or to invest, and that makes sense because the move is specifically from a place where that's a challenge to a place where that's the benefit you're getting. Instead, we're mostly talking to people who are coming from Western Europe, North America, and are coming from the world's strongest job markets and moving to places that are low cost of living. So you would never realistically expect a logic process to come up with, I should then work there. You're going to make a fraction of what you made somewhere else, and this isn't your market. Anyone who moves from Nicaragua to the United States is at a huge disadvantage, and so they're hoping that the better job market makes up for that disadvantage. But if you come from North America to Nicaragua, you're at the same disadvantage, but the job market is tiny compared to there. And so your one advantage that the other direction has, you don't have. Everything's against you. So it's the last thing you would want to do, even if you could, and generally you can't. So it doesn't normally come up as a real possibility, but it's important to understand this is not a place your brain should have ever gone to. So what should it be going to? Well, you have the people who have retirement money. That's set. But if you don't, then what you should be doing is one of two things. Looking to take your investments and continue to make your investments in the places where they make sense, right? US, Canada, Western Europe, these are places where regular investments pay off on average and do really well. You have so much leverage by having access to those markets if you're going to simply be buying a business, whether it's buying an existing business, starting a business, or simply putting your money into normal investment mechanisms, such as a mutual fund, index fund, something like that, or buying stocks directly, or even bonds, but that's not what you would want to do. You want to do it in the markets where that's low friction, high return, right? Not take that money out of that market and put it into a high friction, low return market. That makes no sense. This goes against anything an investor or a investment specialist would tell you. It's like, you buy low, sell high. That's the basics of investing. When people are talking about doing business in Nicaragua, what they're talking about is buying high and selling low. Literally, they're getting the fundamentals backwards. So that's where you run into a problem. The second thing is, if you're not investing, or in addition to investing, if you need to work, either work in your own business, start a business back wherever you came from and work for yourself remotely, or find a remote job and work for someone else. You have the ability to do that. There's no reason to be thinking about working or investing in the local market. That's just not necessary, and it's not beneficial. It's not the logical place to go. So if you are in this position of wanting to enact your expat dream, that's fantastic. Simply use then in the process of trying to pay for that, in the how do I fund my expat dream, instead of jumping to an emotional place, make sure you step back, take a deep breath, think, and say, how would I best leverage the advantages that I have? Oh, I can earn big money, or I can make big returns by investing and or working in the high cost markets that I'm coming from, and I am at a massive disadvantage in the low income, low investment return market that I'm moving to. I'm in the best possible position. I'm in the lottery winning position. I am from a market that pays out big time, and I'm flexible enough and brave enough and willing to move to a place that gives me ultimate power to leverage that. It doesn't get any better. That is truly the expat dream in every conceivable way. The least work, the most return, the best bang for your effort. That's fantastic. Don't give up that dream because for a moment you thought you might want to be a slave to a bar. Did you take a job as a bar back when you lived in the United States or in Canada? No, that didn't sound great to you. Yeah, it might be better to do that kind of job in Nicaragua, but it's still the same job. And if you didn't get excited about doing it there, you probably won't be excited about doing it here. Instead, get excited about paying your bills in the easiest, most effective manner. So as an expat who lives in Nicaragua and does invest, how do I, is the second part of the question, how do I make my decisions around the type of investments that I'm going to do? Well, very importantly, it should be clear from the first part, I am not choosing to invest in Nicaragua for the purpose of getting getting maximum return. Certainly, it would be nice if I could make money, and the more the better. That's just what business is, right? But the idea of investing in Nicaragua needs to be understood that this is a hobby and not a business. You must, for all intents and purposes, you must be thinking in terms of, what is it that I'm trying to get? Money can't be it. If money is your goal, you would be investing somewhere else. So something else needs to be driving you. For me, there's a couple of factors. One, I love business. I just always have. So having businesses, owning a restaurant, I've always wanted to be a restaurateur. I started managing restaurants when I was 16. I've always had some involvement in restaurants, so that's something that I love. I've been managing hotels since I was 19. That's something that I love. So these are businesses that I've always had a certain connection to. My wife has managed hotels, but not restaurants previously. So, we always talked about, we would love to have a little boutique hotel or a bed and breakfast or something like that. It's something we've always wanted. My parents talked about opening a restaurant in the 80s, I think, up in Maine. So the idea that this is something I would want to do was always there. I have a business that is paying my bills. I have a business that I work for during the day. So my ability to go out and invest in other things does exist. And if they can not lose money, that would be fantastic. But the assumption has to be that they will. So yes, on some level, simply having businesses so that I have a business. It's fun to go sit in my own restaurant and eat. It's fun to go stay at my own hotel. It's fun to go to my own places. Those are things that I enjoy. And once in a while, I may invest in something because it is a showcase or a testing ground for something that another business is doing. I have the benefit of being able to do vertical integration at times, not very often, but once in a while. There's these interesting crossovers that I'm able to do because of my foreign businesses sometimes get to leverage these things. So those things can play into why it may be sensible. But by and large, there are two really large considerations beyond, will it lose just tons of money and is it something that is fun? Those are important for us. But two really, really critical factors for us need to be understood. One is, are we beneficial for our community? Are we contributing to our community? Remember, I am or you should know, I am a long-term committed resident of Nicaragua. I am not here temporarily. That is not my plan. I may travel, I may do other things, but I live here, not just Nicaragua, but the Leon community. This is where I live. And so we have purchased land to have our long-term house here. We've already been here for a really long time. I first came to Nicaragua 10 years ago, been planning on living here full-time since 2019, which is 7 years ago. We have actually been here full-time since during COVID. We actually didn't wait till COVID was over. We came during COVID and made this our permanent home. We have been here permanently for a really long time. I have permanent residency and so forth. And we would love to pursue citizenship if that should be offered to us, right? So this is our home. For most expats, Nicaragua is either a temporary stopover, and this is true nearly anywhere, right? It's not because it's Nicaragua. Most expats moving to a new country, it is a temporary thing. They may not know how long it's going to be. It may be months or years or possibly decades, but most are considering it to be at least sort of temporary. And of course, there's always the possibility that something will happen to us. We need to move somewhere else, but the intent is for this to be our long-term home, our permanent home. I am raising my children here with the expectation that they will continue their lives here. Most likely, this is probably going to be their home base for the rest of their lives. And so I have a very important incentive, not just to want to do good as being an expat. I want what I do to be a positive contribution to wherever I am, but this is my community as well. So supplying things that help grow or protect my community or provide resources that I want to use in my community or others are going to is very important. So that I'm having a positive impact on Nicaragua as a whole, on my local community, Sutiaba here, these are really important factors. And the second is, does the business supply a need that we would use, right? And so in many cases, if we have like a restaurant or a hotel, it's because it's in a location where we would like to eat, or it has food that we can't get somewhere else, or a hotel is in a spot where we would like to stay. We don't live, for example, directly on the beach. And it is one of the reasons that we moved to this part of the country is my wife specifically really enjoys being near the ocean. Well, we don't want to live on the sand. That comes with a lot of complications, like, well, your computers wear out really quickly and it's more expensive. But if we have a hotel in that location, we can go visit anytime that we want. We don't have to feel like we're splurging because we're using our own resources. And when we're not there, it's easy to rent it out to other people because it's not like a bed and breakfast, or it's not like a house that we have to put on the market. It's an actual hotel with rooms, right? And so that can be a really good usage of this is supplying things that we want to use, which is beneficial to us, and we can get that benefit. And if we can make any amount of money while doing it, even if it's just $100 a month, then that is a fantastic win, considering those things. So it's a hobby business. Anything that you're going to be doing here, you must assume is going to be a hobby business. Could you make better returns here than you might make somewhere else? It's theoretically possible, but realistically, you have to understand that it's never going to happen to someone who isn't a long-term business expert. And even the people who put in a lifetime of being business consultants and such, the nature of being very, very good at it means that, yes, you could make really good money here, but you could make even more somewhere else. The ability to make lots here is going to be the same skill you have to make lots more somewhere else. So it's never going to be, realistically, the location for maximizing investments. It's just not sensible to think of it that way. You need to have a reason why Nicaragua is where you would invest. And those reasons really come down to, you want to make a difference here in Nicaragua. For some reason, you are just emotionally unable to stop yourself from investing where you physically are. That seems to be the driving trend. People just don't have self-control, and that's why they do it. You want to provide something for yourself. Either you're providing for others or you're providing for yourself through the mechanism of having a business. Or the fourth one, and this is quite big for a lot of people, this doesn't affect me because I'm long past this point, but if you wanted to get investor residency here in Nicaragua, then obviously you want to pick a type of investment that is approved by Intour, by the Department of Tourism, to qualify for that investment residency. And then beyond that, you're going to want to look at things that are going to minimize your losses. You're probably not in a position where you can talk about maximizing profits. If you are, they're tiny, but what you really want to do is minimize what your losses are going to be. So you want something you can easily monitor and protect, where you're not going to bleed out cash. That's generally the driving factor. Now, where you want to live, what your skill set is, those things are going to be really big factors for those things. There are skills that you may have. You may be able to start a business doing something that I could never possibly do, and vice versa. I can probably do some businesses that you can't do. That's just normally how things are. So not to be surprised, it's not like there is any cookie cutter that we can say, oh, you know what, restaurants just always make money. No, we can generally say restaurants will almost always lose money. That's true anywhere, especially if you come someplace like here, and especially if you're a foreigner. Those are just, it's easy to have guaranteed losses, but anything that's a essentially guaranteed profit, if that existed, if there was truly something that could beat the market average reliably, then everybody would instantly start doing that. Everyone who had money would pick that thing, beat the market until there was so much of it that it was saturated and it would no longer beat the market. It's self-correcting as soon as it could be identified. And so this is a thing. People who are not business people don't realize that a essentially guaranteed beat the market number cannot exist. The entire concept of the open market is that as soon as there's something like that, people looking for the arbitrage profits swarm into that market, and it auto corrects almost instantly. If there was a shortage of restaurants, people would open restaurants until there was no longer an advantage. You can have very localized advantages. Wow, I found this one community. It's starting to grow. No one has put in a restaurant yet. I'm going to get in early. I'm willing to invest before the people are there, but I'm sure they're going to get there. And when they do, I'm going to be the long-standing restaurant. Everyone else is going to have to compete with me. I'm already in place. That's perfect. If you can find that place anywhere in the world, that's the miracle, right? If anyone knew that that place existed, someone would have opened that restaurant already, right? It's all about getting out there and discovering. And like everything we say here in Nicaragua, this is more true more broadly. If you're looking for business opportunity, you need to get out there on foot, walk around to get to know communities and figure out what's been overlooked, what's missing, what changes are coming that have not yet been addressed, and take some risks. Business make their profit based on the willingness to take risks. Smart business being run well lowers their risk. Reckless investing ups the risk. But if you're doing a good job, then over time that risk will equal some reward. But you have to be able to hedge. You have to be able to try multiple things. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. That's a very dangerous thing to do with business. Venture capitalists are successful because they go out and they invest in 10 wild ideas, and they know if one of them does well, it'll pay for the other 9 to go out of business. But if you can't afford to do all 10, or more likely 100, hoping 10 will make it, then you have too much risk, and there's most likely you're simply going to lose your money, just like buying lotto tickets, right? If you can't afford to not win the lotto, you can't afford to be buying lotto tickets. I hope that answers your question and gives you some understanding and confidence in being an expat, whether in Nicaragua or somewhere else, that the market and the idea that you're going to invest locally simply doesn't play into a logical approach for most expats. That is not the expat dream, and in fact goes completely counter to the expat dream. You want solid income that is reliable and high, not unreliable income that's very low. So going after paths that are essentially going to guarantee the latter when you have access to the former makes no sense and is the opposite of fulfilling your expat dream. So I'm not trying to discourage you from being an expat. I'm trying to encourage you to be a good one and be much more affluent and happy with it. And the more affluent you are bringing in money from somewhere else, the more money and spending power you have to make a difference in Nicaragua by spending that money on bigger houses to rent, by having more restaurants cook you food and deliver you food and have more people providing you services and so forth. Because you have that extra spending power, you can actually make far more of a difference by working remotely or owning a business remotely or investing remotely and bringing those profits in and spending them here. Not only will you get far more for your time, effort, and money, but that time, effort, and money will also positively impact Nicaragua far, far more than if you start a business here in almost all cases. There's a few exceptions. You start a factory here, you make some amazing product, you ship it to Canada, Canadians pay for it in huge numbers. Yeah, that would make a huge positive difference as well. But short of something like that, these are the processes that really work. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAllenMiller. It comes directly to me. It's like Patreon and helps pay for our cameras and software and all the things we need to be able to do this show. It really does take a lot. Really appreciate all of my amazing audience. If you'd like to get down in the show notes, you can send in video questions to me. You can send in email. You can get on our social media and all that stuff. And of course, get down those comments, say hello, ask your questions, and I will see all of you tomorrow.